Hey, Mark. Thanks for meeting me today. I've actually been looking forward to this chat all week. I've had something on my mind lately that's a bit deeper than our usual talk about movies or work.
Hey, Anna. You sounded a bit mysterious over text. I'm intrigued. Usually, when people say they want to talk about something deep, it involves a major life change. Is everything okay?
Everything is fine, really. It's just that lately I've been feeling like I'm on autopilot. You know the feeling? I wake up, go to work, come home, scroll through my phone, and sleep. I'm fine, but I'm not sure if I'm actually fulfilled. I started wondering, what is my actual purpose?
Wow, we're starting with the big guns, the meaning of life conversation. Honestly, I think everyone hits that wall at some point. It's that realization that being busy isn't the same thing as being productive, and being productive isn't the same thing as being happy.
Exactly. And I feel like there is so much pressure on our generation to find our passion. But what if I don't have one single burning passion? Does that mean I'm destined to be unhappy?
Not at all. I actually think the idea of a sole purpose is a bit of a myth. But let's break this down. Maybe we should look at what happiness actually looks like first.
That's a good point. I think we often confuse happiness with pleasure. For me, eating a chocolate cake makes me happy for 5 minutes, but it doesn't give me a sense of purpose. It's fleeting.
Right. Psychologists often distinguish between hedonic happiness, which is pleasure and enjoyment, and eudaimonic happiness, which comes from having a sense of meaning and contribution.
Eudaimonic. That's a fancy word, but it makes sense. It's like the difference between the high you get from buying a new pair of shoes and the feeling you get when you finish a difficult project that actually helps someone.
Precisely. Think of it as the difference between a mood and a state of being. Happiness is often an emotion that depends on external circumstances. You get a promotion, you're happy. The sun is out, you're happy. But what happens when things go wrong?
That's the scary part. If my happiness is based on things going well, then my whole sense of purpose feels like it's crumbling.
Exactly. That's why satisfaction is a more stable goal. Satisfaction is more about your overall evaluation of your life. It's looking at the big picture and saying, even though today was stressful, I'm living a life that aligns with my values.
I read about something called the arrival fallacy the other day. It's the idea that once we reach a certain goal, like getting a certain salary or getting married, we will finally be happy forever.
Oh, that's a classic trap. We think, I'll be happy when, but the when keeps moving. Once you arrive at the mountain peak, you just see another taller mountain.
It's like we are addicted to the chase. Is there a biological reason for that?
Definitely. It's all about dopamine. Dopamine is the reward chemical in our brain, but it's actually more about anticipation than the reward itself. It pushes us to seek more, but it doesn't help us stay satisfied with what we have. For that, you need serotonin and oxytocin, the chemicals related to stability and connection.
So, scientifically speaking, my brain is programmed to keep me searching for the next big thing, even if it doesn't actually make me feel better in the long run.
In a way, yes. Evolutionarily, it kept us moving and surviving. But in the modern world, it just keeps us scrolling and consuming. To find true satisfaction, we have to manually override that seeking instinct and practice being present.
That sounds like a lot of mental work. So, if we stop chasing the highs, do we just settle for a life that is okay? That sounds a bit boring.
Not boring, just grounded. Think of it like a deep ocean. The surface has waves that go up and down. That's your daily happiness and sadness. But deep down, the water is calm and steady. That depth is your purpose. You can have a stormy surface, but still feel a deep sense of peace underneath.
I love that metaphor. It means I don't have to feel bubbly and excited every day to be living a good life. I can be tired or even a bit sad and still feel that my life has value.
Precisely. If we chase only the highs, we end up on what's called the hedonic treadmill. You keep running and buying and consuming, but you stay in the same place emotionally. To find true purpose, we have to look for something more sustainable.
So, if purpose isn't just a feeling of joy, is it something we find, like a hidden treasure, or is it something we create?
I'm leaning towards create. I think purpose is an action, not a destination. It's the why behind the what.
Let's talk about work then. We spend at least 40 hours a week working. Honestly, that's a huge portion of our waking lives. Do you think our job has to be our purpose? I feel a lot of guilt because I don't love my job every single day. Some mornings, I just want to stay in bed.
I think that guilt is a byproduct of modern hustle culture. The do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life mantra is a bit misleading, don't you think? It's such an impossible standard. Even professional musicians or elite athletes have days where they hate practicing or feel burnt out.
That's a relief to hear. I like my job. I'm a graphic designer, as you know, but sometimes it's just technical work. It's moving pixels around, dealing with demanding clients, and fixing software bugs. It doesn't always feel like I'm changing the world or fulfilling a destiny.
But maybe your purpose isn't the design itself, but the impact of it. Have you heard of job crafting? It's the idea that you can stay in the same job, but mentally reframe your tasks to make them more meaningful.
Job crafting. That sounds interesting. How does it work in practice?
Well, instead of seeing yourself as someone who just makes logos, you could see yourself as someone who helps small businesses find their identity. One is a task, the other is a contribution. It changes the narrative in your head.
I see. So even if the work is repetitive, the intention behind it gives it a sense of weight. But what about people who are in jobs they genuinely dislike just to pay the bills? Not everyone has the luxury of a creative career.
That's a very grounded point, Anna. For many, work is a means to an end. There's no shame in that. If your job provides the financial stability for you to pursue your real passions, like your YouTube channel or your family, then that job is successfully serving a purpose. It's the fuel for your life's engine.
So work can be a tool rather than the goal. I like that perspective. It takes the pressure off my career to be the everything in my life. I think we sometimes expect our jobs to provide us with friendship, status, money, and spiritual fulfillment. That's a lot to ask from a 9 to 5.
It really is. I also think we should distinguish between a career and a vocation. A career is your professional path, but a vocation is a calling. Sometimes they overlap, but often they don't. You can be a lawyer by profession, but a mentor by vocation.
That resonates with me. I've noticed the parts of my job I enjoy most aren't even the design parts. It's when I get to explain complex ideas to my juniors and help them grow. Maybe my vocation is teaching, even if my job title says designer.
Exactly. And once you realize that, you can look for opportunities to do more of that vocation work within your current role. It makes the autopilot days feel much more bearable because you're looking for those specific moments of connection.
It's about finding the why in the what, right? If I know why I'm doing this, to support my growth or help my team, the what becomes much easier to handle.
Precisely. Work shouldn't be a prison, but it also doesn't have to be a fairy tale. Finding a sweet spot where you are competent, respected, and fairly compensated is a huge part of a happy life. Speaking of finding that sweet spot in your career, have you ever actually sat down and looked at the Japanese concept of ikigai?
I've seen the diagrams with the 4 overlapping circles. It's all over social media. It translates to something like a reason for being or a reason to get out of bed in the morning, right?
Exactly. It's a beautiful framework because it forces you to look at your life through 4 specific lenses: what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for.
I love the theory, but honestly, Mark, looking at that diagram sometimes makes me feel more stressed. It feels like an all or nothing goal. If I'm missing just one circle, I feel like I failed the Ikigai test.
That's a common misconception. People think ikigai is a static destination you reach and then stay there forever. In reality, it's a compass. Most of us spend our lives drifting between the intersections. For example, if you have something you love and you are good at but can't get paid for it, that's just a passion or a hobby.
Right, like my pottery classes. I love it and I'm getting quite good at it, but nobody is going to pay me $5,000 for a lopsided bowl, so that's a passion, but it's not my ikigai.
Exactly. On the flip side, if you have something the world needs and you can be paid for it, but you don't necessarily love it, that's a vocation. It's useful, but it might leave you feeling a bit empty or on autopilot, like you mentioned earlier.
I think that's exactly where I am. I'm in the intersection of good at it and paid for it. That's a profession. But I'm missing the what the world needs and what I love parts. It feels functional, but not soulful.
And that's the void many people feel in mid-career. The trick isn't necessarily to quit your job to find a new ikigai, it's to look at how you can pull your current situation toward the other circles.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, maybe you keep your paid-for job as a designer, but you start doing pro bono work for a charity you care about. Suddenly, you've added the what the world needs circle to your existing skills. You're crafting your ikigai.
That feels much more achievable. It's about balance, not perfection. I also read that in Okinawa, where the concept originated, ikigai isn't necessarily about a grand career. It could be as simple as tending to your garden or being a great grandparent.
That's a crucial point. Western culture has industrialized ikigai to make it about productivity and money, but the original Japanese sense is much more about the small daily joys that make life worth living. It's about the process of being alive.
So my ikigai could be the morning coffee, the way the light hits my studio, and my design work, all woven together.
Precisely. It's the reason for being, not just the reason for working. When you stop looking for one giant answer and start looking for small intersections, the pressure disappears.
Well, Anna, do you think fear is what's really keeping you on autopilot? I mean, deep down, underneath the I'm too busy or I'm too tired excuses.
Honestly, if I'm being completely transparent, yes. I've thought about signing up to volunteer for an art program for underprivileged kids for months, but every time I go to the website, I close the tab. I worry I won't be a good teacher, or that the kids won't like my style, or, even worse, that I'll realize I'm not actually as passionate as I thought I was.
That's the perfectionist trap. We often prefer the idea of doing something over the reality of doing it, because in our imagination, we can't fail. The moment we start, we risk being average.
Exactly. Being average feels like a failure when social media tells us we should be extraordinary. But how do you actually break through that paralyzing feeling?
You have to lower the stakes. We often treat finding our purpose like a massive high-stakes exam. But what if it's just an experiment? Scientists don't fail when an experiment doesn't work. They just collect data.
So, if I volunteer and it's a disaster, I haven't failed. I've just collected data that teaching might not be my specific path.
Precisely. You're one step closer to the truth. There's also a great concept called micro-bravery. Instead of trying to change your whole life in a day, you just do one thing that makes you 5% uncomfortable.
5%? I can handle 5%. So maybe I don't sign up for a year-long teaching contract. Maybe I just email the coordinator and ask one question.
Exactly. That's a micro-win. Most people wait for confidence to arrive before they take action, but the secret of successful people is that confidence is a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. You build the bridge while you're walking on it.
Build the bridge while you're walking on it. That's a terrifying but beautiful image. It reminds me of a quote I read. Everything you want is on the other side of fear.
It really is. And we have to remember that purpose isn't about being the best in the world, it's about being of use. If you help one kid learn to draw a tree, you fulfilled a purpose in that specific hour. It doesn't have to be a global movement or a viral video to be valid.
I think I've been waiting for a sign or a guarantee of success. But there are no guarantees in life, are there?
None at all. But there is a guarantee that if you stay on the couch, nothing will change. The pain of staying the same eventually has to become greater than the fear of change.
That hits home. I'm starting to feel that pain of staying the same. The autopilot is getting louder than the fear.
That's actually a good sign. It means you're ready to evolve. You just have to give yourself permission to be a beginner again. Being a beginner is messy, but it's the only way to find something meaningful.
You know, Mark, even if I manage to overcome my fear and start something new, there's another monster waiting for me: social media. I see people on Instagram who are digital nomads or lifestyle coaches, and they look so incredibly happy and purposeful. They're doing yoga on a beach in Bali while I'm sitting in a great office cubicle. It makes my life look, well, mediocre.
I hear you. It's a modern trap. But remember, Anna, social media is a highly curated highlight reel. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes footage, the messy hair, the bills, the stress, with their theatrical trailer.
I know that intellectually, but emotionally, it's a different story. It's hard not to measure my success against theirs. If they're 25 and running a global charity, and I'm 30 and just trying to figure out my morning routine, I feel like I'm behind in life.
That's the timeline trap. There is no universal schedule for success. Have you heard of social comparison theory?
No, tell me more.
It's a psychological concept which suggests we determine our own social and personal worth based on how we stack up against others. There's upward comparison, where we look at people we think are better than us, and downward comparison, where we look at those we think are worse off.
I definitely do the upward one too much. It usually just leaves me feeling inadequate.
Exactly. Upward comparison can be a two-edged sword. It can inspire you, but more often than not, it leads to envy and a loss of self-esteem. The problem with the internet is that it provides an infinite supply of people to feel less than.
So what's the antidote? Should I just delete all my apps and live in a cave?
You could, but that might be a bit extreme. Instead, try digital minimalist strategies. Start by unfollowing anyone who makes you feel bad about yourself, even if they're not doing it on purpose. If seeing a specific influencer makes you feel gray, hit that unfollow button.
That's a good practical tip. I also need to stop looking at my phone the second I wake up. It's like I'm inviting 100 strangers into my bedroom to tell me how much better their breakfast is than mine.
Precisely. Comparison is the thief of joy because it shifts your focus from what you have to what you lack. Instead of being grateful for your talent and design, you're bitter that you aren't a world-traveling photographer.
I suppose I should try to turn envy into information. If I'm jealous of someone, it usually means they have something I actually want. Instead of feeling bad, I should ask, what steps did they take to get there?
That is a brilliant shift in perspective. Turn why them into how can I. Your purpose is unique to your skills and your environment. If you try to live someone else's purpose, you'll always feel like an imposter. You are the only person who can be you.
You are the only person who can be you. It sounds like a cheesy greeting card, but it's actually quite profound when you think about it. If I'm busy imitating someone else, my own unique contribution to the world is being lost.
Exactly. Your path is yours alone. Comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 is just unfair to yourself.
So, if we agree that purpose is created through action, how do we start? Do I need to quit my job tomorrow?
Please don't. That's a common mistake. People think they need a grand gesture. Instead, look at your daily habits. Happiness is often found in the micro moments.
Like what?
Like practicing gratitude. I know it sounds cliché, but taking 3 minutes a day to acknowledge what went well actually rewires your brain to look for the positive.
I've heard that. Also, flow state. When I'm drawing and I lose track of time, that's when I feel most alive. Maybe my purpose is just to cultivate more of those flow moments.
We've talked a lot about self, but what about others? Research shows that the strongest predictor of long-term happiness isn't money or fame, it's the quality of your relationships.
That's so true. When I'm feeling down, a long talk with a friend, like this one, makes a huge difference. Maybe part of our purpose is simply to be a good friend, a good daughter, or a good neighbor.
Absolutely. Loneliness is an epidemic right now. By being present for someone else, you are fulfilling a massive human need. That's a purpose in itself.
What happens when life gets really hard, though? It's easy to talk about purpose when we're sitting in a nice cafe, but what about when someone loses their job or gets sick?
That's the ultimate test. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote a famous book called Man's Search for Meaning. He argued that even in the most horrific suffering, humans can find meaning.
I've heard of that. He said we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control our response to it.
Exactly. Sometimes our purpose in a difficult season is simply to endure with dignity or to help others through the same struggle. Happiness isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of meaning within the life we have.
This has been so enlightening, Mark. I think I've realized that I don't need to find one big life purpose written in the stars. I just need to be more intentional.
Intentionality is the key. So, what's one small thing you'll do differently this week?
I'm going to sign up for that volunteer art class, even if I'm nervous. And I'm going to put my phone away an hour before bed to actually reflect on my day.
That sounds like a fantastic start. Remember, the journey is the goal.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks to everyone listening on Daily English Dialogues. We hope this conversation helped you think about your own path to happiness.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more English conversations. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.